Okay, so get ready because today we're diving into a story that really gets you thinking.
Oh, yeah.
It's from a legit article, November 25th, and it's about a husband who finds out that his wife has been inflating their children's school fees.
Interesting.
Yeah, it sounds simple on the surface, right?
Right.
Like, okay, maybe a little bit of financial dishonesty, but as we get into it,
Yeah.
it really brings up a lot of questions about, trust and the financial dynamics in a relationship.
Definitely.
And maybe even some societal pressures
Hmm.
that play a part in this whole thing.
I think what's fascinating about this particular story
Yeah.
is that, like you said,
Yeah.
it seems so simple on the surface, a family in Lagos.
Right.
But it really does tap into something that's a lot more universal.
Mm-hmm.
We're all dealing with these unwritten rules
Yeah.
about money and relationships
For sure.
and how those things kind of like sometimes clash in ways we don't expect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's lay out the basic situation here. From the article, it's a Nigerian couple. The husband works in Europe,
Okay.
sends money home for their two kids' education,
Right.
and the wife tells him that the school fees are N1 million per term.
Gotcha.
But then he finds out through a chance conversation with a friend
Oh.
that the real cost is only N500,000.
Wow.
So that's a pretty big difference there.
That's a huge discrepancy. Yeah.
Yeah, like immediately you're thinking, what is going on?
Right. What's the motivation there?
Yeah, is this just like a miscommunication or is
Yeah.
this something more deliberate?
Is there something else going on?
Right. And the article doesn't really give us the wife's side of the story,
Oh, interesting.
which, that leaves things really open to speculation.
Yeah.
But the comment section of this article is just buzzing
Oh, I bet.
with all these different theories and interpretations.
I can imagine. Yeah. What are some of those theories?
Well, some people are just jumping right to the conclusion that, she's being financially dishonest. Maybe she's using that extra money for herself, maybe trying to keep up appearances.
Right. Right. That classic kind of like,
Yeah,
keeping up with the Joneses.
exactly. And there's this one commenter, EJ Monuangwu Jakor,
Huh?
who makes some really interesting points.
Like what?
She asks, does the wife work?
Okay.
Is the husband truly providing enough?
Hmm.
What is her overall relationship with money like?
Right.
And it really gets you thinking about the assumptions we make about women's roles in managing finances.
For sure. Because, you bring up these traditional gender roles.
Yeah.
And, especially around finances.
Yeah,
Those can create a lot of unspoken tension,
absolutely.
within a marriage and even in modern relationships.
Yeah,
It's interesting how often there's still this expectation
right,
that the husband's the primary breadwinner and the wife's responsible for
right. Stretching that budget.
exactly making ends meet.
And that pressure can be huge,
Oh, yeah.
especially in a place like Lagos, which the article kind of paints as this,
Yeah.
fast-paced, very competitive lifestyle.
Fast-paced.
So you can see how someone,
Yeah.
maybe feels like they have to overspend to keep up,
To keep up.
even if it means not being totally honest.
Right. And it makes you think about,
Yeah.
what's happening psychologically.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of research out there about financial infidelity,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically hiding money or financial decisions
Right.
from your partner.
Right.
And a lot of times it comes from this place of shame or inadequacy
Wow.
or even a desire to kind of have more control in the relationship.
That's so interesting because it's like on the surface, this is about money,
Right.
but then you bring in these psychological elements.
Exactly. And then it becomes way more complex.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about, are there societal expectations?
Oh, totally.
Is there this kind of unspoken pressure?
Yeah.
Especially, I think it depends on cultures and stuff, but to present this image of success,
Sure.
even if you're struggling financially behind closed doors.
Right. It's like keeping up with the Joneses all over again.
Exactly. And that can lead to some really,
Yeah.
unhealthy financial behaviors.
For sure.
Like we see in this story.
Absolutely. But what's really interesting is there's this other comment
Okay.
that I thought was really thought-provoking.
What's that?
And it questions this whole idea of enough
Oh, okay.
when it comes to financial support.
Okay.
So the commenter is basically saying, like,
Yeah.
even if the husband thinks he's sending enough money,
Right.
his idea of enough might not match up
Yeah.
with the wife's reality or what things actually cost in Lagos.
Right. Like cost of living
Exactly.
could be very different.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point because it really challenges us to think about
Totally.
our own assumptions about,
Right.
what is adequate financial support
Right.
within a relationship.
For sure.
And it really highlights how important it is to have open and honest conversations
Absolutely.
about money, expectations, and needs.
Communication is key.
Yeah, because even if the wife doesn't have like bad intentions,
Right.
if there's this lack of communication,
Yeah.
it can just create so much mistrust and resentment.
Exactly.
So it's really about this bigger issue of financial transparency in a relationship.
Yeah. Makes you wonder how many couples are out there dealing with these kinds of issues,
I know.
but just not talking about them.
Yeah, and that's something I think we need to talk more about.
For sure.
Financial literacy,
Yeah.
communication, and giving couples the tools they need
Absolutely.
to deal with this stuff.
Yeah.
This story really hit home for me because I know people in my own life who've been through similar things where money became like this unspoken source of tension.
Right.
And it just makes me realize how important it is
Yeah.
to have those conversations, even when they're uncomfortable.
Even when it's hard?
Right, because it's so easy to just sweep those anxieties under the rug.
Oh, it's so easy.
But I think ultimately that just leads to bigger problems
Oh, for sure.
down the line.
Down the line. Yeah.
So yeah, transparency and open communication are really key here.
For sure.
It's not just about splitting the bills or whatever. It's about being on the same page,
Absolutely.
financially and emotionally.
Yeah. I think that's a great place to kind of like
Yeah.
wrap up this first part of our conversation.
Yeah.
Because, we've laid out
We've laid out the groundwork.
the groundwork. We've talked about the story.
Yeah.
We've talked about some of the initial reactions and kind of like
Some of the complexities.
exactly the complexities that we're seeing already.
Oh, sure.
And I think it's going to be really interesting to dive in a
Yeah,
little bit deeper in the next part
I'm ready.
to really kind of unpack some of these themes.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And that's where I think the real challenge comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Having these kinds of conversations
Yeah,
can be so difficult,
for sure.
especially when you've already got, these underlying trust issues or power imbalances.
Right, like where do you even begin?
Yeah.
I mean, the article mentions that the husband is just heartbroken
Yeah.
by this discovery. And, it says he combines generator repair work
Wow.
with his office job, and he's making less than $200,000
Us.
to support his family.
That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, you can just feel the weight of that betrayal.
Absolutely. And, it's not just about the money itself.
Right.
It's about that feeling of,
Yeah.
broken trust. And the fact that he's working so hard
Mm-hmm.
to provide for his family,
Yeah.
I think makes the deception that much more painful.
It really does. You can almost feel his sense of responsibility,
Yeah.
his dedication to his family's well-being.
Right.
And then to have that trust shattered.
Right.
It's like having the rug pulled out from under you.
Exactly. And it brings us to this question of the wife's perspective.
Right.
What led her to make these choices?
Mm-hmm.
Was it purely about, a desperate attempt to cope with financial stress?
Yeah.
Or was there something a little bit more calculated going on?
And that's what's so interesting is the article doesn't really get into her motivations.
Right. We don't know.
So we're left with all this room for speculation.
Right. And that, I think, is almost what makes it more compelling.
Totally.
It forces us to kind of confront our own biases.
Yeah.
Our own assumptions.
Are we too quick to judge?
Right. Are we judging without the full context?
Yeah. Or are we being too sympathetic and overlooking,
Yeah.
potential manipulation or even a sense of entitlement?
It's a tricky balance.
It's a really fascinating ethical tightrope
For sure.
because you want to be understanding
Right. Of course.
and compassionate,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you have to acknowledge the harm
Exactly.
that this kind of deception can cause.
It's a classic dilemma. And I think, it speaks to the need for nuance in these kinds of conversations.
Yes. Absolutely.
Because it's rarely just black and white.
Right.
There's rarely a simple right or wrong answer.
When it comes to human relationships and money.
Exactly.
Right. And it makes me think about what this story says about the pressures that women face,
Sure.
especially in certain cultures,
Uh-huh.
to maintain a certain lifestyle or image.
Right. Appearances.
Yeah, even if it means, being dishonest about their finances.
It's a really powerful question.
It is.
And it makes us look at, those systemic factors
Right.
that might contribute to these behaviors.
Yeah. Are there societal expectations
Yeah.
that put this undue burden on women to manage finances
Mm-hmm.
in a way that's often invisible?
Invisible and
Yeah.
unacknowledged.
It's like we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg here.
Totally.
This individual story,
Mhm.
represents a much larger issue.
It does. So where do we go from here?
Right.
What can we learn
That's the big question.
from this, and how can we apply it?
To our own lives and relationships.
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways
Right.
is that it's so important
Yeah.
to have open and honest conversations about finances
Right. From the very beginning
of a relationship.
Absolutely. And it's not just about,
Right.
being transparent about your income and expenses.
Yeah.
It's about your financial goals,
Totally.
your fears, your aspirations.
And about being on the same page.
It really is.
And creating a space
yes.
where both partners
Yeah.
feel comfortable expressing their needs and concerns.
Without judgment.
Without judgment, exactly.
Right.
And I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Because even if both partners have good intentions,
Mm-hmm.
if there's that underlying fear of conflict or disapproval,
Yeah.
you're going to have a communication breakdown.
Yeah. And that can have some serious consequences.
Oh, absolutely. And I also think, this story highlights the need
Yeah, okay.
for more financial literacy. So
Okay.
especially for women,
That's interesting.
it's about empowering women to
Yeah.
understand their financial rights,
Mm-hmm.
to have a voice in financial decisions,
Right.
and to seek support when they need it.
I love that because it's not just about preventing these situations.
Right.
It's about empowering women to take control
Yes.
of their own financial well-being.
Exactly, within their relationships.
Yeah. This has been so insightful.
It's a fascinating case.
But what about the couple in this story?
Yeah.
Like, if you could give them some advice,
Oh.
what would it be?
Well, I think first and foremost,
Yeah.
they need to make communication a priority.
Okay.
They need to create that space where they can both share their perspective,
Right.
their fears, their needs,
Without judgment.
without judgment. You got it.
That's got to be a tough conversation.
Oh, it definitely will be.
Yeah.
And, they might need to bring in a therapist
Okay.
or a mediator to help.
To facilitate that.
Exactly,
Mm.
because they need someone who
Yeah.
can help them navigate those emotionally charged conversations.
And find a way to heal and rebuild trust.
Exactly.
It's like they need to hit the reset button on their whole financial relationship
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
and rebuild it on this foundation of honesty and respect.
Absolutely. And that's going to require both of them
Yeah.
to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
to listen, and to be willing to compromise.
It's a long road ahead,
It is.
but it's a journey they have to take together.
If they want to save their relationship.
Yeah, and that brings up something else.
What's that?
Forgiveness.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a big one.
Can you really forgive a betrayal like this?
Right.
And if so, how do you even begin to rebuild that trust?
Forgiveness is such a complex thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a deeply personal process.
Yeah.
There's no right answer.
Right.
But I think the important thing to understand is that forgiveness
Yeah.
doesn't mean condoning what happened.
Okay.
It's about letting go of that anger and resentment
Mm-hmm.
that's holding you back.
Okay, so it's not about forgetting or minimizing the harm,
Not at all.
but it's about choosing to let go
Right.
of the pain so you can heal.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that forgiveness is a process.
Okay.
It's not like a destination.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time.
Yeah,
It can be messy.
for sure.
And you might even need professional help to get through it.
Right. You might need guidance.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's about making a conscious choice
Mm-hmm.
to move forward in a way that feels healthy
Yes.
and authentic for both people.
And sometimes, forgiveness might not be possible.
That's true.
And that's okay too.
Yeah.
It's important to respect each person's journey
Mm-hmm.
and their ability to heal.
It's a reminder that there's no one right way to deal with these things.
Absolutely.
What works for one couple
Yeah.
might not work for another.
Exactly.
It's about finding what feels right for you
Mm-hmm.
and respecting the choices that everyone makes.
Yeah, I think, this story has really taken us
It has.
on a roller coaster
Yeah,
of emotions and insights.
for sure. Like, we started with this seemingly simple situation,
Right.
and we've just uncovered all of these layers.
And all this complexity.
Yeah, of complexity.
And I think that's, the power of these deep dives.
Well, I agree.
We take a single story,
Mm-hmm.
a news article, a glimpse into someone else's life,
Yeah.
and we use that as a starting point
Yes.
to explore these bigger themes that connect with all of us.
It's like holding up a mirror
Yeah.
to our own lives and relationships.
It really is.
Because even if we haven't experienced this exact situation,
Right.
we can all relate to the communication challenges, the
Yeah.
complexities of trust,
For sure.
and that desire for financial security.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we're all human.
We are.
We're all navigating these challenges.
In our own way.
Yeah. And, there's something comforting about that shared humanity.
There is.
knowing that we're not alone.
Yeah, that can be so empowering.
And it allows us to approach, these kinds of situations
Yeah,
with more empathy and understanding,
for sure.
maybe even a little more grace.
It's a good point, and it brings us back to the wife's perspective.
Right.
We've spent all this time
Yeah.
analyzing her action.
Trying to understand her motivations.
Exactly. But we've only heard one side of the story.
Right. What if we could rewind,
Okay.
go back to the beginning, and hear from her?
Yeah.
What might she say? What pressures was she facing?
What led her to this point?
Exactly.
I mean, maybe there were cultural expectations within her family or community that we just don't know about.
that could be.
Or maybe she had her own financial anxieties, maybe from past experiences or even trauma
That's possible.
that made her feel trapped.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that
Mhm.
everyone is carrying their own stuff,
Yeah.
their own baggage, their own experiences and beliefs.
Right.
And those things shape the decisions that we make.
Absolutely.
And sometimes those decisions, even if they're harmful, are a way of coping with these deeper unresolved issues.
It's like they say hurt people.
Right.
It doesn't excuse it,
No, not at all.
but it helps us understand
Understand, but why?
that sometimes these choices we make, especially about money,
Yeah.
are coming from fear, insecurity,
Right.
or even this need to protect ourselves.
And I think that's where the real work comes in.
Okay.
Not just in understanding the why,
Mm-hmm.
but in figuring out a path towards healing and accountability.
Yeah.
If this couple wants to move forward,
Yeah.
they have to have those tough conversations and
Mm.
acknowledge the harm and create a plan for rebuilding trust.
It's a tough road ahead,
It is.
but I also see it as an opportunity
Yeah,
for growth,
for sure.
both as individuals and as a couple.
It's about facing those uncomfortable truths,
Mm-hmm.
challenging those assumptions,
Yeah.
and, choosing to create a new story for their relationship.
A new narrative.
One that's built on honesty, respect.
Mm-hmm. And that shared commitment
Right.
to financial well-being.
Exactly. And, maybe
Yeah.
through that process, they can repair the damage
Mm-hmm.
and come out stronger and more connected.
It's possible.
It's a powerful reminder
Yeah.
that even when things are tough,
Even in the midst of betrayal.
there's always potential for redemption and transformation.
I love that. So before we wrap up,
Okay.
I have one final thought-provoking question for our listeners.
I like it.
If you were a fly on the wall watching this couple going through this, what would you hope to see from them?
What would show you that they're taking accountability?
Yeah, what would show you that they're willing to change
Willing to change.
and that they really want to heal?
Right.
Would it be, a heartfelt apology?
Yeah.
A commitment to therapy?
A change in behavior.
A change in their financial habits?
Right.
Or maybe it's something less tangible, like, a renewed sense of empathy,
Okay.
a willingness to listen without judgment,
That's huge.
or a shared vision
Mhm.
for a future that's built on transparency and trust.
As you're thinking about this,
Yeah,
remember that every relationship is different
for sure.
and there's no one right answer.
Right.
But I think in this story,
Mm-hmm.
we see these universal truths about love and trust
Absolutely.
and how power plays out
Yeah.
in a relationship.
It's so complex.
It is. And ultimately,
Yes.
it's up to each person, each couple,
Mm-hmm.
to decide how they're going to navigate these challenges.
Yeah, what kind of future?
Yeah, what kind of legacy they want to create.
It's a good reminder that we all have choices.
We do.
So as you go about your day,
Yeah.
let this story encourage you to think,
To reflect.
to prioritize open communication in your own relationships,
Yeah.
and to remember that even in the toughest times,
Right.
there's always the possibility for growth, forgiveness, and a deeper understanding of the human heart.
Beautifully said.
That's a wrap on our deep dive into this incredibly thought-provoking story.
It was a good one.
Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring,
Yeah.
and remember that even the most challenging situations can teach us valuable lessons
Absolutely.
and offer opportunities for growth.